Welcome into our lives.
And welcome to the Expanders Club podcast.
We're so happy to have you.
Join us as we embark on a journey of deep exploration, soul searching, and asking the hard questions.
With the goal of truly understanding the most aligned, empowered, and purposeful versions of ourselves.
We want to live an extraordinary life, and we're willing to dig deep to find out what it takes.
Buckle up. You're about to meet a new version of yourself, an extraordinary one.
Oliver English, welcome to the Expanders Club podcast.
Hey, Maddie, thanks so much for having me.
It is great that I finally got you here for a chat.
I know you were on your whirlwind trip back to the motherland to be rejuvenated, and I'm glad you had a good time back there, but I'm glad you're back stateside as well.
Yeah, thanks. A lot of my friends said the same thing. They were worried I might not come back.
Venice was not the same without you. It was devastating, and I think everyone felt that. So it's good to have you back.
What a welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anytime.
I know we were just talking about the Venice Farmers Market. I went there this morning and I was thinking I might bump into you.
Yes, I was there on the slightly later side, but I was there for sure. Got some pussy willows and some other flowers and some oranges and tangerines and stuff like that. But your salmon toast was super inspiring. That looks delicious. So I may borrow a little inspiration from you if you don't mind.
Thank you so much. When I get a vision in mind, I just have to make it. Like when I see something that someone's made, I'm like, oh, I'm going to make that. And went straight to the farmer's market and did it. Smoked salmon.
What was the bread called again?
The seeded rye bread, the densest bread you've ever seen.
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
High fiber, seeds, everything you need.
You've inspired me. I'm going to go make something like that for lunch, perhaps.
Yeah. Are you gluten-free?
No, I am trying to minimize gluten. I definitely found out that I have like a leaky gut and some, gut issues from like way too many pills for acne like back in the day. And I went to like a holistic doctor, and they were like, you've got super leaky gut from all of these basically antibiotics for many, many years when I was younger. And so then I found out that I had leaky gut and a sensitivity to gluten. And so I try to limit it, but also I love gluten. So it's it's a give and take, but I feel like it's more of a reflection of the broken food system than it is gluten itself. Like if you go to Europe, you can eat bread and have pasta and enjoy life, and you don't feel terrible, and it doesn't literally sort of like impact your gut and other parts of your body in a sort of serious inflammatory way. Whereas a lot of the gluten here has been grown in unhealthy soils, highly processed, and so it has a negative impact on our overall health. So I try to be balanced with my approach to gluten, but I do love, like good bread is just like, there's nothing better.
It just hits different. And I so agree. And I've been realizing that recently when I go to the store to buy pasta, I'm checking that it's wheat grown in Italy rather than in the US, because it doesn't affect you like wheat does here, right?
It's true. It's a different system overall. And it's a bummer that we have to be supporting wheat that's grown so far away. If we could support wheat that was grown in a healthy way here, that would be the ideal. That's what we need to get to. But until then, I think there will be a good amount of supporting that food system. But at least we know that exists and that food system does exist, and there is a good way forward and a model to do that. But it shouldn't be bread should not be the enemy of the people. It should be a participant in the culinary world.
Exactly. And I think so many people that I speak to, certainly, they are gluten-free because they're like, oh no, gluten really negatively affects me. But as we're saying, it's not necessarily the gluten. Not all gluten is made equal. Not all wheat is grown equal. And it's actually the process.
How is it in your home? How is it in Australia? Is it like very American influenced in terms of like the food system and what options are there, or what's the vibe?
So I am always so impressed with food in Australia. I think we try and grow as much as possible in Australia, or at least at the grocery store, it's very clear the things that are grown in Australia. And do you know, organic was never a thing. You know how we've been here, it's like you must buy organic and it's very clear what's organic and what's not. In Australia, I'm still trying to work this out as to why, but I wouldn't say that organic fruit and veg across the board is like a must, because Maybe it's because we're using less pesticides. I don't fully know. Maybe because we still have nutrient dense soil. I don't fully know. But I will say in general, I'm very impressed with the quality of the produce and the fresh food. A lot of people and companies, like, we're just eating real food is the default. And I think there's a lot less processed food, which I'm always so impressed by.
I totally agree. I'm just taking one photo.
You got to get the snap. I mean, let's just be clear to the audience here that Oliver is sitting in his garden, his beautiful garden in Mar Vista. Front yard, backyard.
Venice technically, but very close. To be just on the other side, we were in Mar Vista, but
he made it to the Venice postcode.
We just barely made it. We're on the outskirts, but technically we're just in Venice.
What an honor! Well done.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Can you just talk us through, Oliver, the biodiversity in your yard?
Absolutely. So I think it's fun to start with what was here originally. And when we first got here, it was just a regular lawn, and we barely used it. Maybe like kicked the soccer ball out here every once in a while, but like it wasn't really. We never really hung out here. And the avocado, the tree above us, which I now know is an avocado tree, was sparsely populated, not super dense. Just kind of like looked a little scraggly. If you look at the YouTube or the Google images from a couple years ago, it still looks totally different. And after making the documentary, or through the process of making the documentary, we were super inspired by all of these farmers and gardeners and experts that we met about what you can do in your own life to make a positive change. And they're like, you can grow food in your front yard, you can grow pollinator habitat, etc. And we were like, all right, screw it, let's try that. And so, super inspired by that, we ended up over the course of like 2-3 years transforming the front yard into a small garden, and now kind of a permaculture experiment. But we've got dozens of different types of trees, different food producing plants, herbs, a whole section's kind of drought tolerant California plants that do well with a little bit of water. But I'm looking right now at a beautiful hummingbird that is just like fluttering about eating the pineapple sage. And so we went from having zero biodiversity or maybe a couple, squirrels, to having a plethora of hummingbirds, butterflies, bees, all different types of pollinator flowers and habitats, which is beautiful. I'm like an old man now. I like love watching hummingbirds, but they're amazing.
No, they say that happens with age. We become like bird watchers the older we get.
I would have thought that would be the case. At least the hummingbirds are incredible. They're so sweet. They're magical little creatures.
You cannot not stop and watch a hummingbird. If you see one, that's like you're engaged.
Next time we're doing the whole podcast in the garden, and we can just look at hummingbirds. What do you think?
I do wish that I was in your garden with you right now. Indeed. It sounds like a just wildlife haven.
It is. And the coolest part, one more final point on the garden. The coolest part is, and I didn't anticipate this like when we started it, but it has totally transformed our relationship with our community and a lot of our neighbors. Before we started it, we maybe talked to like a couple of the people on the street who were like kind of our age. But after starting to grow a bunch of plants, a bunch of different people from a bunch of different ages, different parts of the world, different backgrounds would all stop and say, oh, my mom used to have a garden, or, oh, I'm a chef from this country and I used to love planting this. We're like, what's that? And it's like begun this whole dialogue with a much broader group of our people, a much broader and diverse group of people in our community, in our neighborhood, who we now like know and talk to because of the garden. So it's been this like beautiful community connector in addition to a pollinator habitat, which was kind of an unexpected and beautiful part of the whole thing.
Oh, I love that. That is such a beautiful message. And so interesting you say that, because literally this morning I was sitting out on my deck and I have a front lawn, which I used to think was cool. And then now I realize that number one, you just have to water it all the time. So it's a huge sucker of water. There's nothing, diverse about it. It's not bringing any type of animals to it. And then I have this big hedge that's growing around it. So I've watched, in the 3 years I've lived at my house, I've watched the hedge grow from just like below my head to now like far, far above my head. And I realized, I was like, why don't I see my neighbors as much anymore? And it's because the hedge has grown so much that I can't see them as much. And that Number one, it's creating a barrier to the rest of the world. So you don't have that connection with your neighbors that you want. And it's just like you explaining the diversity that you have in your garden and people coming and appreciating that and the animals that it brings. It lacks. I have with just grass.
That's a fascinating idea. Yeah, that physical barrier is also
The physical
the
barrier.
community tangible barrier. And like we have, a couple plants that separate us, but like you can walk by on the pathway and still like have a conversation. But that's a very interesting idea. The idea of like, is our society one where we continue to build higher and higher fences and walls, or is our society one where we continue to build more and more green spaces and gardens that connect people? And who do we want to be and where do we want to go? And I think it's very clear what happens. One model is about isolation and, supporting, unsustainability. And the other model is about connection and collaboration and sustainability. And it's very clear, which one I think is better, but I think it's like, and I think our generation wants to move in that direction and will in the coming years.
Yeah, so true. I also want to touch on, because I know that there's talk about, moving away from lawns and like planting more, vegetation and things like that. But if you were, I don't know, what would be like a simple thing that you could do if you had a yard that would just be like a first step towards being more sustainable?
For sure. One of the first things is getting a compost bin of some kind. You can do a very simple one for, a couple, 10, 20, $30 or a couple $100. Or you can kind of make one yourself like in a DIY way, collecting your food scraps and turning that back into healthy soil that you can then apply to plants that you bring into the garden is a huge step. And it's also one of the first tangible acts of regeneration that many of us do. We actually turn something that was going to be waste and is often thrown into a trash can and contributes to climate change through the emissions of methane. Instead of contributing to climate change, we can have a positive impact through turning those food scraps, lawn trimmings, that kind of stuff, leaves from this tree, into healthy soil that you can then use to plant more plants. But so in your front yard, composting is great. And then also planting any amount of food and flowers is hugely impactful. And it doesn't have to be a crazy amount. You don't have to rip up the entire lawn. But in California, we live in a Mediterranean climate, for example, and the plants that you would plant would be different anywhere that you are. But whatever is native and local to where you are in the country or in the world that has evolved through time to do well there, start planting those. So, for example, we have right now pineapple sage, which is an amazing plant and it attracts a lot of hummingbirds. We've got a bunch of that does well here. We planted a bunch of that. We have nasturtium. There's like two sort of tracks that work together. One is planting any amount of flowers. And you can go to a local nursery, you can go to Home Depot. Local nurseries better. Planting that in the ground, adding some compost you can get from a local nursery, that kind of thing. And then also growing some food or flowers, turning 10% of your lawn into a little garden is huge. That would have, if everyone turned 25% or 30% of their lawn into a small little garden food producing area, that would have a huge positive impact on the food system and people's connection to both food and our communities. So I just planting one plant, just planting one bush of rosemary has a huge impact, and it starts to connect us back to the bigger food system and food more broadly. So I think having those impacts. I'm looking at this hummingbird again. Come on, having those impacts is huge, and it's a daily reminder of this relationship as well.
I think that was the most powerful thing for me growing up. We had a yard and we grew our own vegetables. It was huge. And I just remember the size of the giant zucchinis and cucumbers and tomatoes and pumpkins and just these huge, incredible vegetables that we would grow and eat. And it would be like, oh, it's dinner time, kids go pick some veggies from the garden. And that connection for me has just run so deep. And I don't think I ever really appreciated how much of an impact it made on me growing up, experiencing that, but just always then realizing. And then when you go to the grocery store and you see all the manicured fruit and veg packaged up in plastic, that's when you're like, this isn't right. But if you'd never seen it otherwise, if you'd only ever seen it packaged up in plastic looking like that, you'd be like, oh, that's just how it is. So it's like that connection is so important.
Could not agree more, and more important now than ever. When we've gotten so used to convenience, so used to everything in packages, so used to everything delivered to our doorstep. And I do understand and appreciate the convenience of delivery food. I do get it. I get it. Like it's just part of where our society has evolved and the food system has evolved. But I think as we move in a more technically advanced direction, it becomes more and more important to better understand and have that connection to food and the food system and nature generally. And food is a conduit to, I think, a bigger connection and understanding and relationship with nature and the world, which is directly and deeply connected to us as humans generally.
Yeah. Where did it all start for you, your connection to food and sustainability?
Yeah, absolutely. So I joke that I grew up on the banquettes of my family's restaurants in Boston. My parents were chefs. I grew up in the restaurant business. They opened their restaurants together. So from a very early age, I was in restaurants, on the banquettes, in the prep kitchen, going to markets here and there. And then I designed, developed, and opened restaurants professionally for many years, up until a couple of years ago when I really started to understand and appreciate how broken the food system is. I was opening restaurants around the world, and I started to see um, how much food was being shipped around the world, the environmental impact of that, how much food was being wasted, how climate change was starting to impact, migration and food security in different parts of the world. I just started to kind of connect these dots and see how unsustainable it was. And originally, I just started to um, seek out farmers to get produce into our restaurants, just to get more locally sourced produce into the restaurants, and ended up being absolutely amazed by some of their passion and dedication to their work and love for what they do and sustainability more broadly. And thought, man, more people need to meet farmers. And my little brother Simon, who I work with every day, we run a production company together, um, was a filmmaker. And so we started filming interviews with farmers, and then that grew into this crazy vision to start working on a documentary about the future of food. And our original sort of, I guess, hypothesis, you could call it, was, with population growth and climate change and health epidemics, what role does the food system play in causing all of those issues? And what role can the food system play in solving all of those issues? And so that ended up taking us on a 7-year journey out of the restaurant business into the world of documentary storytelling, better understanding the challenges we face, but also the solutions that are at hand. And it has been the joy of a lifetime. We visited like 60 farms all over the world the past couple of years,
My dream.
through our documentary and through our production company, Feeding Tomorrow, Common Table Creative. So we work, in addition to making the film, we now have a production company, my brother and I, and we work with food companies, NGOs, and nonprofits all around the world to tell stories about food and farming. So together, we've been able to travel the world and see some of the most sustainable farms all around the world, and are super passionate now about telling stories about the future of food and farming and connecting people back to food and farming and farmers. And I think if we can do that, we can help start and ignite more participation in the overall environmental movement through the lens of food, through the lens of the positive daily choices we make every day. And if we start to support a healthier, more regenerative food system through the choices we make every day, we can start to radically transform the planet that we live on, I believe.
Yeah. Do you think that your documentary, by the way, I love it. It's so well made. You guys did such an incredible job. It's so inspiring. You walk away being like, oh my goodness, this is so important. Everybody needs to know this. Like, shout it from a mountaintop. And you did a great way of portraying that message.
Thank you. We've known each other for years, and I feel like you've been hearing little sprinkles about it over the years, but you finally got to see the full thing, which I was very proud to finally invite you after all the years.
Thrilled to see it. I remember seeing the vision on a whiteboard at your place.
Yep.
And the way that you spoke about it was just like so passionate. You were like, look, we've got this vision. We need the world to know this is what we want to put out there. And I was like, how are you going to do that? And you're like, well, we're building a documentary. And of course, I don't doubt that these things take a long time. Like, this was a big project, but you did it. And now here it is on Apple TV, Amazon, Prime,
Apple
right?
TV, Amazon Prime, Google Play. We found out that we are going to be, I can't announce which ones quite yet, but we're going to be on a couple big international airlines as well.
Oh,
And we also found out this morning we're going to be going into every single New York City public school as well, offered to over 1,000 teachers for free viewing for public schools in New York City, which is huge because getting this information to kids and getting some spark and inspiration about connecting kids back to schools, back to school farms and gardens, but also about creating healthier nutrition programs in schools. All of this is deeply interconnected. So if we can spark a little inspiration and get people excited about it, that would be huge. But yeah,
mm,
7 years.
wow. Feeding Tomorrow, everyone. Such a good film. Go and watch it. Highly recommend. Oliver, that's incredible. So true to get it in on the level of children, to learn as young as possible actually what the problem is and how we can solve it is so important.
It is. And during COVID, we helped start a regenerative school farm at a public middle school in Santa Monica.
Oh my God, so cool.
And basically, one of the moms at the school, who's now a good friend of mine, met from yoga class. So Venice, I can't even. Anyways, she was like, "Hey, can you come and speak to my principal about this about healthy eating for school and kids?" Anyways, we ended up talking and shared with the principal that we asked all these experts in all these fields, how do we connect kids back to nature? And they said, connecting kids back to food and farming is really key to solving and is starting to address all these bigger interconnected issues. And so we ended up convincing him and working together on the creation of a big regenerative school farm at a public middle school here in Santa Monica. And we hired a farmer. And now every kid that goes to that school spends time out there every week learning about where food comes from, how it grows, how it impacts the world around us. And we have, on many occasions, we have parents come to us and say, my kids never used to eat kale, could not get my kids to eat green beans. Now I can't get them to stop because they tried it on the farm with the farmer and they see it through a different lens. They enjoy it now. And by the way, here's the compost, because my third graders learning about compost, and now they came back and convinced us to do it at the house. So it does work, and it's not rocket science. The same thing with regenerative agriculture. It's like so many of these practices and principles have been and still are practiced by indigenous communities, traditional communities all around the world. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We're kind of going back to an older way of doing things and using modern technology to help us maximize those efforts. But yeah.
Oh, I love that. On a individual level, like what is the message? Like what can we do as individuals?
The message for me, I think, from the film, and this is to borrow a line from the main farmer in the film. His name is Mark Shepard.
Please do.
He says, believe in the power of one. And what that means is through the food system, we all have the power to make impactful and important choices every day. We have the power to support a system that destroys, denigrates, and degenerates the earth through the food that we eat, and poisons the environment through the amounts of pesticides, etc. Or we can support a food system that restores, regenerates, and heals the earth through the food choices that we make and the farmers that we support. So through our food choices and through our individual actions, we can have a really big impact. A couple of the highlights from the film in terms of maximum impact, sort of environmentally, health-wise, etc., are supporting organic and regenerative agriculture. Organic regenerative agriculture are the most sustainable types of agriculture that collectively as a system, because of the way that they're set up and all the different plants and animals that are part of the system, they benefit and focus on healthy soils, carbon sequestration, biodiversity, and the health of the farmer and their whole ecosystem through time. It gets healthier through time versus something that is not healthy. So through the farmer's market, at the grocery store, at the restaurants, supporting these options when you can, how you can, where you can. Number two, planting food and flowers, like we were talking about earlier, in your own little corner of the world, whether it's a front yard, a backyard, big, small, whether you have a terrace on the side of the building, you can plant something. You can plant, a one pollinator flower. You can plant some herbs. You have a little bit more space, like let's get an orchard going. We wherever we can, however we can contribute to the greenification. That's not a great word, but that
It's a
idea
great
to the
word.
world. Let's all like take a little responsibility and ownership of that. And there's beauty and joy in that, like we saw in creating the garden and like connecting to the whole neighborhood, which is really beautiful. Putting plants at the center of your plate. This does not mean that you need to be a vegan necessarily, and if that's your choice, I totally get it. I was a large vegan for many, many years. But what we've learned from the film is that, environmentally speaking, if you were to normalize the impact of meat, if you were to normalize the impact of a calorie of food, land, energy, water, and fertilizer that goes into making that food, it would be a 1 for plants, 2 for non-beef items, chickens and pigs, and 10 to 100 for beef.
Oh my God.
So, environmentally speaking, eating more plants, putting plants at the center of your plate, reducing red meat in particular, and switching to regenerative sources has a huge impact. And finally, compost is a huge, we were talking about that earlier as well. Whether you're just collecting your food scraps and you're putting it in the green bin, if you have a green bin or a brown bin, no matter where you are, that's huge. If you have a little situation in your garden, that's even better. But just making sure that those food scraps and your waste is not going to the landfill and can be turned into something healthy. And the last part is supporting policies and initiatives that are advancing organic regenerative practices and making healthy food more affordable to the most amount of people. Because this movement will not work. This idea will not work if everybody does not have healthy access to food. If it's just for, frankly, rich white communities, it is not going to achieve the scale that it needs to achieve. We need to make sure through policy that healthy food and healthy food access are priorities. And no matter where you live in the country, no matter where you live in the world, you have access to healthy, affordable, nutrient-dense food that came from healthy farms. That's what it's really about. And we also need to make sure that that happens at the policy level. So on our impact campaign website, feedingtomorrowfilms.com, we have 3 partner organizations that we're working with who are trying to advance more sustainable farming practice and healthy food access at the federal farm bill level. Regenerate America through Kiss the Ground, the NRDC, and American Farmland Trust are all partners with us on the impact campaign for our documentary, and we've got initiatives that you can support on that level as well. So in all of these ways, you can make an impact. Yeah. It doesn't need to be, I don't mean it to sound overwhelming. You don't need to do all of them at once. Pick one that resonates with you and start there, and in that way, you are having a big impact.
That is so good. So good. So many ways. And just making it so achievable, breaking it down. I mean, none of it sounds like a drag. Like, it all sounds pretty cool. And it's good for you. And when it's good for the planet, it feels good.
And and on that note, exactly what you said, Maddie. It's good for you and good for the planet. And what we now know from visiting all these farms, visiting all these nutrition experts, at hospitals, at schools, at farms around the world, is that the food that comes from the healthiest farms, the farms that are most nutrient dense, the sustainable organic regenerative farms, because that food was grown in healthy soils, it is the most nutrient dense and healthy for us. It has the most flavor from a culinary perspective. It is also the most sustainable. So the food that is the most healing for us comes from the farms that are also the most sustainable. So there is a direct connection here that is the soil. That is a powerful idea. So the food, and on the other side of that, the food that comes from the industrialized farms that use a lot of chemicals and produce one type of crop that are turned into junk food, that's the food that's making us sick. So there's a direct relationship here between the type of food that we grow, the nutrients that go into that food, the system that comes from, and how that overall impacts our health and the ecosystem.
It's crazy. You really do taste the difference. I remember doing this once. I bought maybe it was a melon or something from the farmer's market, and I compared it to a melon from Trader Joe's, and it was so significant, the taste. And it,
and a lot of the stuff in the grocery store, the supply chain to get it there, which is like on one side like miraculous that it all happens, that's one thing, but also it could be sitting in a cold storage for weeks. It could be, there's a lot of different middle people that it goes through, and you don't really know when it could be harvested early. It could be, held up in
Mm,
containers for a long period of time. That's why this direct relationship with farmers and with people growing your food is so important, and I believe will continue to be more important moving forward, because that's what it's really about. And that's why the farmers market is so wonderful, is you can have that direct relationship, as we both know and love.
oh, I know. We are so lucky to have access to the farmers market and knowing that the food has probably just been freshly grown, picked, it's in season, it hasn't been frozen, it hasn't been stored, and so it's at its peak. And when you experience that, you're like, wow, I wish everyone could experience this, because I know people would choose to eat more fruits and vegetables rather than packaged food, because this does taste so good.
100%. And I would also add to that, like, we are so, it is not lost on me that we are so lucky to live in
Yeah.
Southern California and have access
Mhm.
to a farmer's market. And I mean, I definitely can't, like, I don't spend like all of my food budget there. I try to go get a couple things every week. And it is more expensive right now because
It
the
is.
system has been set up to be that way. But that's why we need to change the nature of the system. Um, but yeah, that's really what it's about.
How can we make it actually? How can the farmers markets and how can regenerative agriculture how can it be cheaper? How can it be more accessible?
We need to shift the model that creates incentives for the types of farming that we do. Right now,
Mhm.
we are incentivizing and subsidizing the growth of inexpensive commodity crops, corn, soy, and wheat, 90% of which get turned into corn and soy to feed cattle and other, highly industrialized processed ingredients. If we transition the subsidies and incentivize and paid and supported farmers to transition to more organic regenerative, when we started to transition that food system, that food would over time become less expensive. So it will be a process that we need to start now and have gradually increase over time. It will be a scale. Um, we can't just flip switches overnight. That's just not how it's going to work. And we want to make sure that no one goes hungry along the way. But it will
Yeah.
be a scale that we need to increase over time.
In the 7 years that you spent creating the film, the documentary, did you see progress in the number of regenerative farms out there?
100%. And I've seen a huge increase in brands and food companies that are regenerative organic certified, that have the ROA label. I've seen a
Mm,
huge number of organizations that are part of the solution. I've met a lot more farmers and people that are doing it, and I think a lot more consumers are aware of it. So I've seen the movement increase in a significant fashion and move in a really positive direction. You can see that by the amount of items in the store that have the Regenerative Organic Alliance label, the ROA, the Regenerative Organic certification. Bigger brands are taking part in it. We talk to brands every day that are in this space, as like that's the niche of our production company. So it's very, very exciting. I think it's only going to grow.
oh, that's so good to hear. Do you think that it's predominantly in places like California, because we're so focused on this, or do you see it everywhere in America?
I think right now it is predominantly here because this is where a lot of the culture is made, I believe,
Hmm.
particularly in the food and storytelling realm. And a
Hmm.
lot of the food comes from California. Um, but as the movement grows, more and more organizations of greater scale will begin to make it more mainstream. As an example, I don't know if you know the brand Annie's, but we grew up here in
Hmm.
the US like eating Annie's, in the winter on the East Coast, and it was kind of a staple. Now, say what you will about General Mills. I'm not making a statement for on their behalf, but I'm saying just Annie's in general has a regenerative version because they did a big initiative to grow some of their products regeneratively.
Oh, wow.
That's huge. We've been talking to a friend of mine, a very, very big, well-known rice company here in California. Long storied company. They're going to be launching a big regenerative component, a bunch of products that are nationwide in the coming months that I've been speaking to. I can't say who exactly it is. So
Oh,
it is and will become and is becoming more mainstream, and I believe will continue to to do so through time, which is really exciting. And yeah, I see it every day. I meet people who are in the space. I get introduced to a new regenerative food brand. The awareness is growing, the movement is building, there's excitement about it, and that gets me excited.
Oh, I love to hear that. So what, now that the documentary is done and out there, and obviously, you're on a mission to get it in front of more people, but what are you working on now?
Right now, we're continuing to promote the film. We're continuing to do some screenings. We have an Earth Month screening San Francisco premiere on the
Ooh.
21st, 23rd, excuse me, which I'm very excited about. And right now, our production company has a couple other projects we're working on. We've been working with American Farmland Trust, which is a long storied organization in the U.S. that supports American farmers, helps them to transition to organic regenerative ag. We've been doing a big project with them to help, revitalize and redo a lot of their storytelling at both the documentary, short form film level and also the social media level. And they're also working with this amazing farm family in Wisconsin to film the transition of a almost 500-acre farm in Wisconsin to a
Oh,
regenerative,
cool.
a big regenerative farm. So we've been filming and documenting that process with them as well. And then we're also starting to, plant a couple seeds for the next project. And there's a couple things that we're getting excited about, and so that we're in the early stages of that. But we really have, as a company, we have sort of the documentary part of our work, the commercial side, and then also the hospitality and dinners, as you know, but all under the umbrella of educating and inspiring people to think differently about food, where it comes from, how it grows, and how it impacts the world around us.
Oh my gosh. So cool. So cool, Oliver. The stuff you're working on, so powerful. I mean, yeah, I know you as a plant-based chef. Can you speak more to that? I mean, your food is good.
Oh, you're very kind. Yeah, I love to cook. I grew up cooking with my family. Definitely am not like trained in any sort of a culinary way, but kind of a home cook trained, I guess.
I love
I'm
to
not.
hear that because I always feel I'm like, I'm not a chef and I feel as though I should be, but I think to know that you
No.
just taught yourself to do it yourself, then that's
Yeah,
like anyone can do it.
and honestly, there's so many levels of great chefs. Like I can make a good bowl of pasta. I don't think I'm like that great. I think I just have fun with it and make some stuff up. But for me, the main thing is just being fearless in there and like
Yeah.
not being too delicate. Like I burn shit all the time. I oversalt stuff all the time. I like it's fine. Like I mess up dishes all the time. Like
Yeah.
it's just about having fun and trying and like knowing that you're gonna mess up and just seeing it as a learning opportunity and not being so precious about it.
Yeah. Just
So I'm like,
experimenting.
yeah, just having fun and not being so like I definitely am not like amazing, I mess up all the time. It's fine. But it's about the enjoyment of it, I think.
Hmm.
And just throughout making the film, I learned so many lessons about what the future of food looks like from a sourcing perspective and from a health perspective. And I try to think about incorporating that into some of the food that I eat. I'm not a vegan, but I like to try to cook mostly plants when I can, and kind of go about an 80-20 rule. But I'm just more conscientious now about sourcing generally, where things are coming from, how they're grown, and sort of my overall impact related to that.
What's your favorite thing to cook?
I'm a simple, I think I'm a simple Italian kid at heart. Probably just a good bowl of pasta. Honestly, a really good bowl of pasta, of various stripes. I just that's my favorite. It's just like it reminds me of growing up at my grandma's house and making
Mm.
tomato sauce and just hanging out together in the kitchen.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Garlic and olive oil is my favorite. That smell, beginning of a
Oh,
meal is just like my favorite. So if I wanted to just like my ultimate comfort, probably just a bowl of pasta.
it's nostalgic, isn't it? I mean, pasta just hits.
And back to the conversation about like wheat earlier and gluten, like we shouldn't have to like say like no pasta ever. I don't want to live in a world where you can't have pasta. That world sucks.
That world sucks.
No
I'm
one
not
wants to live in
living
that
in it.
world. No one wants to
No.
live in that. I refuse to live in the pastaless world.
It'd be such a shame.
Yeah.
What pasta do you use?
Uh well, I was doing gluten-free rice pasta for a while. But sometimes if I get good pasta, I'll get like good like, Italian pasta, like something that was like from Italy.
Yeah, I like the Jovial gluten-free brand of pasta.
Yeah, there's some good gluten free brands. I don't know Jovial specifically, but this brand that I get at Rainbow Acres is like brown rice brand that's pretty good. If you kind of undercook the noodles a little bit, you kind of get an al dente vibe.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be very delicate. It's like by the second.
Very delicate, indeed. But yeah, Italian pasta, they know what's
all,
up.
all day. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm always struck by how simple everything they do is. I go there and I'm like, oh, there's just like they don't even try, and it's just like amazing. Oh, a little bit of olive oil, and like a shaving of garlic, and it's like it's done. You're like, what am I doing? I have so much sauce, but it's
Keep it simple.
keep it simple. We got to cook sometime, Mads.
I know I would love to cook. I remember you made just roast veggies, literally roast veggies, but they just were so good. I was so impressed. I mean, that's my go-to, is just like roast veggie bowls.
Me too. Rice and beans, roast veggies.
But I think we should have some fun in the kitchen. That would be cool.
We should do it. We should do a cooking podcast. I don't know how that would work, but
No, I've been wanting to do a cooking class. I think we should do that, like
I
a
feel like
recorded
there's
cooking
something there,
class.
like a hybrid cooking podcast, something. It's kind of funny or
I think
confusing. I don't know yet. We could try it.
we'll make it entertaining. And so what could we pick from the garden, your garden, to cook?
I just planted a bunch of tomatoes, which I'm pretty excited about. A bunch of herbs, and I just did a new. Right now, I've got leafy greens like Swiss chard, kale, but I
Nice.
just did a new like spring, early summer planting so it might be a couple weeks, but I've got tomatoes, cucumber, squash, and peas.
Ooh,
I need a couple weeks for them to really get going though, but they will.
it's just the beginning. The season is upon us.
Totally. It was super rainy and like gray for a long time, and so it wasn't quite happening. But now spring's starting to pop. You gotta come check out. You gotta come check out the garden. You haven't been here in a while. I feel like you would appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, would I ever? Going back home to Australia and seeing my mum's garden, my dad's garden, they've both got the most epic vegetable gardens. A
Oh,
lot of people are growing their food back there, which is really cool to see.
I think we're gonna continue to see a movement in that direction in a big way.
Yeah. Especially as we move out of renting and being able to like buy our own houses, get more
Totally.
space. I mean, all of my friends, we just talk about dreaming of moving on to farms and big properties. That's really what we
Totally.
want.
And like live. I think we're gonna like start living in little communities again too. Little like five, six, four, five, 6 person like pods, like on a big piece of land or something. I feel like we're gonna move back to that kind of way of doing things.
If you could live anywhere, where would you live?
I'd probably live in Italy for a little while just 'cause I love the food so much. I love the
Mm,
culture of food. Then I could travel around from there. Also, maybe South America, maybe like Sao Paulo or somewhere cool like that. Somewhere like Argentina, somewhere a little bit, like Uruguay, somewhere. It's kind of interesting. I don't know.
somewhere where you don't have to hear like sirens every other minute in the
Exactly. Yeah. I'm
background in
sorry. I
LA.
don't know that audio is gonna be terrible. Hopefully not.
No, it's fine. Just another day in LA. I think we just have to,
It's part of
embrace our
the it's part of,
surroundings.
it's part of the ambiance, part of the
It,
cityscape.
it is, exactly. Who do you think in the world is doing it right? Like living right?
Who's living it right? I think we're living it right. I think we're doing it right. Who's living it right? Huh. Huh. Who's living it right? I've been pretty excited. I'm a big fan of Jose Andres, and I've been a big fan of his work, what he's doing in terms of like meal relief and bringing a lot of help to people who are suffering and cooking amazing food and doing that through food. That's someone who I have a lot of respect for in the world and kind of the impact that they're making, and also like Alice Waters, the impact that she's had on the food system has been amazing. I don't know if that answers your question, but those are the kind of people I kind
Oh,
of look up to in a way. I don't know if that
oh, I
answers your
love
question.
that. No, I mean that was actually going to be a question, who are your role models? But yeah, I mean, maybe I was meaning more as like a country of people or something, but
Oh, that's okay. Totally. Okay, let me answer that one. That's a good question. I feel like, I mean, if you look at like the overall statistics for like happiness and like which countries in the world are the happiest, it's usually the countries like Sweden, Norway, Finland, that kind of world. So they're doing something right up there. Then in terms
Yes.
of food, and then in terms of the food system, I feel like the Italians really have it down. The
Yeah.
French doing well. That
Hmm.
part of the world has a good way of doing things in terms of the food system. And I think just
I,
happiness too. I feel like there's a lot of parts of the world that prioritize happiness overall, and it's not just a work, work, work forever culture. There's more of a balance with just like being and living and finding true happiness, not just working all the time.
yeah. How do you feel right now in your work-life balance?
I feel good. I feel like I'm a very like diligent hard worker in general, but I've also been trying to reflect on not getting burnt out and not only thinking about work, because I feel like that is not, it's not sustainable, and you do get burnt out if we're not meant to be working all the time every day. And
Hmm.
I think the idea of regeneration is also about like how do you keep yourself healthy, tuned up for the long term. And maybe you don't need to be working 7 days a week all the time. Maybe the
Hmm.
best thing for you is to go for a walk in the woods and to put away the phone and computer for a day and just to be. And I've been trying to incorporate more of that into my life, and just be more present too. Because I feel like I've realized the working so much is, for me, sometimes caught up with just like not being present. You're just like more so future oriented, and I don't know. I think I'm trying to find more of a balance,
Yeah.
and I am, but it's the awareness of the need for that balance only came up in the past couple of years, and I'm trying to find that sweet spot.
Isn't that crazy? It's just like, how can we get back to that? How can we get back to the balance, looking after ourselves?
Yeah. What about you? How about yourself? What do you think?
I do a good job of prioritizing my health, I would say, for sure. And there's non-negotiables for me. It's like getting my movement in, cooking for myself. Like I'm always making sure I'm nourished first and foremost. That's like cooking like a big breakfast or a good breakfast for me. It it
What do you
just
like for
sets me
breakfast?
up. Depends on the season, very seasonal, but it's either going to be a smoothie, you know. I love my like blueberry, like almond butter smoothie,
Yep,
hot
I feel you on
banana.
that one. Those are my
Yeah,
favorite.
it just hits. Or like a
Yeah,
green smoothie with just like, spinach and spirulina and mango and avocado and coconut water. Or I love like oats. I do love oats with just like banana and blueberries and hemp seeds and chia seeds. Or I make breakfast tacos with just like scrambled eggs and mushrooms and veg and the miso dressing from the farmer's market and those siete wraps. Mwah,
ooh,
so
ooh.
good. Or like this morning, like I made the seeded toast, which I would usually get like sourdough from just
Can
like
I come
frat.
over for breakfast sometime?
Yeah. I'll have you over for brekkie. Breakfast I take seriously.
It's a good thing to take seriously. Of all the things, that's a good one to take seriously.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I do. What would you say is like a habit or something in your daily routine that you can't go without?
Journaling.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I have for the past like several years. Every morning for 20 minutes or whatever, journal for 3 pages, just like freehand. It's partly it's just like random nonsense, partly it's like reflection, partly it's gratitude, partly it's like hyping myself up. It's really a bunch of stuff. Or it's like just talking, whatever. It's like kind of a mini therapy session, I think, in the morning, and a way to get grounded, and just like I make a little coffee and I do that. And then always reading as well. But for me, the journaling is really changed my life in a profound way, actually, over the past couple of years. So for me, that's everywhere I go, even if I don't have my notebook, which I usually bring with me everywhere I travel, but I always find like a little notepad and still journal, because it's a really important practice.
I love that. I really resonate with that. That I fully agree. Journal writing has been one of the most powerful things for me because yeah, it's somewhere that you can just take your thoughts out and get them down. And whether it's like talking about what you've done, whether it's talking about what you want to do, your hopes, your dreams, your goals, just like jargon, like sometimes you just
Yeah,
need to get it out and it is therapeutic.
it is. It's gonna be the first person, the third person. It doesn't matter. It can be anything. it can be like it can be 15 different subjects in no order, but it feels amazing. So it's been really profound practice that I would recommend to everybody.
Yeah, I'm very much aligned with that. Very much aligned. Okay, so I think I'm going to ask you, Oliver, it was really great to find out a little bit more about your day to day and what life is like for Oliver, the man behind the documentary. Oh, well, let's just give kudos to your brother as well. And who else worked on the doco?
Oh yeah, I would give huge kudos to my brother. So my brother Simon, who's an incredibly talented cinematographer and editor, he shot and edited the entire film. There's a couple other people who helped out, who filmed a couple things, but really Simon like took it on his shoulders and really brought it over the finish line. And super talented and has such a great artistic eye, and I think elevates the subject in a way that is both beautiful and compelling and powerful. So I'm grateful to work with my brother every day on the film and on the production company, and we have a very complementary skill set and partnership. And everything that he does, I can't do and am bad at, and he doesn't want to do the stuff that I do. So it works out quite well.
That's incredible. You have a partnership like that with your brother. Do you guys ever fight?
No, not really. We don't really step on each other's toes. We just kind of do different things. And then also over the years, we had a number of other producers, cinematographers, editors, executive producers, other team members, agents, etc., who played a huge role in the process as well over a couple of years. But it was a small handful of us, really, who wore many hats over the course of 7 years. But it didn't just take 7 years. Through those 7 years, we both made the film, and then also created a bunch of other short form videos as well through our production company. So it was this kind of back and forth, this dance for 7 years.
Wow. Well, you did a great job. You did a great job.
Thank you so much, Maddie. I appreciate it. And congratulations to you on this amazing podcast. Super inspiring, and proud of you and excited to see you bring this to life.
Thank you so much. It has been such a fun journey, certainly of self-growth and putting myself out there and meeting incredible people. And there's one last question I need to ask you. And this is what we love to ask our guests because it gives us a little bit more of a snapshot of who you were, who you are, and who you plan to be. So if you could describe yourself or a word, a sentence to describe your past self and also your present self and your future self, what would they be?
It's funny, when you sent me this, I thought about it a lot, and I wrote them down, and now I've totally forgotten because that was 4 weeks ago.
I know.
So I'm
you got to come up with this. This is candid, guys. No plans.
I literally totally forgot. So what I was, what I am now, and
your future
what
self.
I'm going to be. Is that what it is? Future self?
Yeah.
I think I was curious, a little bit naive, but really passionate. Maybe a little bit insecure. Unsure of myself. But curious. I guess that's how I would say I was. I am now, I think, more grounded, passionate still, determined, really excited, feel very much aligned with what I'm doing and why I'm here and sort of all that. But still at times unsure, I think where I'm going is full realization, passion still. I think more fulfillment in certain areas of life, but I'm excited to get there. I'm excited that it hasn't happened yet, but I'm excited, and I think and believe that it will when the time is right. So I'm excited for that as well, for the next phase of life as well. So yeah, there we are. That was the random, candid, not super clean and concise version.
That was beautiful. The candid version is the best version. That felt authentic, very inspiring. And I like that. It's like looking for that fulfillment, looking for that clarity, etc.
Yeah, now I think it's like I found the purpose and the dharma, and now it's sort of the next. That's kind of now where I'm at, and then the next or like the future is kind of the where does that ultimately evolve into, and how is that incorporated into the other elements of life, and what does that all look like? Which is kind of that next step, which is very exciting.
Are you
But feeling
putting
good and grounded about the here and now.
Yeah, I mean you've done so much and you have so much going on, so that you should be so proud of that. That's so cool.
Thanks, Mads. I appreciate it. I'm really excited for people to see the film and for the film to contribute to the overall movement and awareness around food and environmental issues. Because the truth is that there's so many amazing films out there and books and podcasts, etc., that are about this issue, and people doing amazing work, and farmers and entrepreneurs doing amazing work all over the country and all over the world. So we are grateful to be part of that tapestry of change and to be a contribution to the bigger movement of what I think is an undeniable movement to change our food and environmental existence.
Yes, and I think that this isn't one where it's like, oh, all of these films are competing against each other, because they're complementing each other. That the message needs to come out, and it needs to come out strong, and it needs to get in front of more people for us to actually make a change. So it's so incredible, and you're still one of the earliest people to create a film like this, because we're only going to see more and more of this, because this is it.
I believe we are. I totally agree. I think it's just the beginning
Yeah.
of this movement really taking shape, and I think we're a little bit away from a major tipping point. But we're already starting to see a huge increase in awareness and excitement, and that's really positive.
And how can people follow along and find you?
Yes, you can follow the film is at Feeding Tomorrow. Our production company is at Common Table Creative, and my stuff is at Oliver English, and there's one underscore in the middle, not the word, just the underscore. And the film is called Feeding Tomorrow, most importantly, and you can find it on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Google Play. Please go watch it. Tell us what you think. Share it with your friends. Grow some food and flowers. Have some fun, and cook a nice meal.
Strong message from today. Thanks, Oliver. So beautiful. I'm going to go watch it again. It's such a good film and it inspires you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you. And we'll talk soon.